What's up team? Welcome to the video. Today we're going to be looking at Kizamizuki, or the jab, and how we can apply it in both a sporting and a non-consensual violence context. If you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe. But without further ado, let's get into it. I hope you enjoy. So first off, we need to look at how we're performing the jab. This is going to be more similar to the boxing or kickboxing style jab than the style of Kizamizuki we'd normally see in karate. We're going to start in a semi-bladed stance, so we're going to have to imagine a square approximately the length of our shoulders on each edge. We're going to stand diagonally opposite corners of that square, and that's going to be our stance. We're going to turn our feet slightly in to accommodate greater hip rotation, and then soften our knees. Now, there's a weight distribution in the stance of about 60-40, so we're slightly over the rear foot, about 60% on the rear foot, 40% on the front foot. Now in karate we'd call this stance Sanchin Dachi. Boxers of course just call it standing. Now the hand position I would use is similar to a boxer's guard, except we're going to have our palms forward and our hands open or in loose fists. The reason for this is twofold, and it's more to do with teaching than practicality. So we're unlikely to need or have the time to adopt a formal guard when we're in a self-defense situation. However, by training in this position, we can practice crashing in, limb trapping, transitions to grappling and clinch work, whilst also training a guard position that would be suitable for our sport fighting if we wanted to transition into that, or if our students wanted to do that at some point. They don't have to relearn an entirely new position, they can just alter the current one. So the position we're going to be in is actually fairly similar to a Muay Thai long guard. One technique point that's going to be common to all the techniques, all the variations of the jab we're going to cover today, is bringing the strike back along the shortest line of travel. Now in a sporting context, we don't want to leave our head vulnerable by leaving our hand out forward. And in a non-consensual violence context, we may need to disengage quickly, which means not leaving limbs vulnerable to trapping or grabbing. We've got our stance and our guard sorted. We're going to look at the basic jab. Now there are coaches on YouTube, and I would imagine in real life, who teach the jab as an arm-only technique. It whips out, finds distance, or it distracts the opponent. That's fine, but we want to get as much of our body involved in the technique as we can. So we're going to look at three main styles of jab. The traditional boxer's jab, straight out and back, an over the top jab, which we can use alongside limb clearance, and the long hook or an under jab. So the first style is the traditional jab. We're going to step in along our opponent's midline. So, if we're in equal stances, our feet want to end up between their feet. We're going to keep the elbow in tight. We're going to turn the fist right at the end and bring the shoulder up to keep our face safe. Now the fist should land just before or alongside the front foot. This is the most common style of jab that we're going to see, and is often the first punch that boxers are taught. Now this is a great technique for sport fighting, for finding distance, distracting an opponent, or forcing a reaction, so forcing movement of the head or movement of the hands. And in points fighting, it's also a great scoring technique. It's one of the higher scoring techniques in WFK style karate, not points wise but frequency wise. Now we can use it to stay out of range of an opponent's short range strikes, but also to set up feints. Because it's line of attack and range though, in fact the exact things that make it fantastic in a sport context, it's not the best choice out of the three we're going to cover today for a self-defense situation. So next up we're going to look at an over-the-top jab. The usual advice for most punching techniques is to keep the elbows tight into the body, not rotate the arm until the end of the strike. However, this technique gives us an option for non-consensual violence where we may not be able to line up perfectly for a classic jab. We're going to look at this technique from a much shorter range, where we have a bridge formed or we're clinched up. Here we're going to step out to the side of our jabbing hand and clear the limbs with our rear hand. Our elbow is going to come up high over the trapped or controlled opponent's limb, and then we're going to punch down, aiming preferably for the opponent's head or some vital area in the neck or throat. Now, from a sport context, this technique may be viable in kickboxing if you had trapped limbs, but it'd be best reserved for light continuous competition and above in terms of contact, as it likely wouldn't class as a scoring technique in anything lighter contact than that, so in any kind of points fighting, particularly not in WKF style karate, but probably not in any other style of points fighting. It just wouldn't be classed as a crisp enough technique. Finally, we're going to look at the long uppercut or the under jab. Now, this is going to take the opposite path to the over jab, so the high jab that we've just covered. It's going to start low and it's going to travel up. Now, we can use this in a sporting context in the same way as we'd use the traditional jab. It's going to be used to find distance, it's going to be used to distract the opponent, possibly drop the hands. If we're doing it frequently enough, we can reinforce that reaction, get them to drop their hands and then strike high. But it can also be used in a self-defense or a non-consensual violence context if tactically appropriate. To throw this technique, we're going to need a lower starting guard than we've had for the other two. We're going to bring the front elbow down toward the hip and the hand level with the mid bicep, and the rear hand's going to come forward to cover the face. Now, in a sporting context, this does leave us open to the opponent's right hand, so we need to compensate via movement for this. But that's outside the scope of this video. We're not going to cover that today, we're just covering the technique itself. So those are our three styles of jab for consensual and non-consensual violence, and how they can be applied in both a sporting and a non-consensual violence context. Hi guys, this is an end card. It's where I'm supposed to tell you to watch this video up in the corner, maybe like this video that you've just watched, subscribe to the channel, sign up to the Subscribe Star, and there's a link in the description for it. I could tell you to do all those things, but you're an adult, you'll make the right decision.